A negative employer review can get you into lots of trouble. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the focus group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Welcome to the Focus Group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host, Mr. Tim Bennett. Find us at focusgroupradio.com. That's the housed media of everything we've done, including TFG Unbuttoned, our Tuesday podcast. This show, which is on Wednesdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube and, of course, Facebook Live. And as I mentioned, it's always available at focusgroupradio.com. If you are joining us for the very first time, or even if not, here's the run of the show. I teased an article we're going to be going over that Tim found in the ladders, the back end of the show, and that was the article about what happens when you leave an unfavorable employer review and they decide to go after you. But first, we're going to have some stuff that caught our eye. We're going to talk about our sponsor, Deep Discount. And then after our break, we have a business birthday, and then the aforementioned, a word we don't get to use too often, shop talk. So Tim is in the last gasps, the last week. In fact, when this airs, the last days of the election down in campaigning. This is, you said something really funny the other day. You said, I'm going to see some friends for dinner. And you had a funny line after that. And I thought, this is, if you had to flip the roles around, like, wouldn't I have been the natural candidate? Because, I love to just chit-chat. And
You like to chit-chat. I don't mind chit-chatting. I've met some very interesting people and some nice people. I will say, though, that I could see where politics on a national level could be, boy, oh boy. We always wonder when you see candidates that have fumbled.
Yeah.
Or you wonder when they give their concession speech, where was that candidate on the trail? And because you get lots of advice, and I'm working with some great people, but it's like, don't say this, say that, say this, don't say that. Sometimes you say this, don't say that. And so there was talk about not mentioning my business background, but then the other candidates said, well, I'm anti-business. Well, morons, I'm the only one that has had to make payroll. I'm the only one that owns a business that's running. So how can you call me anti-business? And then, they're supporting somebody who's a Trumper, which is shocking to me. Some of the folks, particularly some of the LGBT folks and some of the LGBTQ businesses. So
have you dug into that further? Have you dug into that? Like, because when we see members of the LGBTQ community, and you could support whoever you want. We're not telling you to vote one way or the other, but sometimes I'm kind of flummoxed by, I like their policy, I don't like them. Or I like their tax stance, but I don't like anything else. And I can't split it that way. I either like them or I don't. Maybe that's just me.
Well, it's their lying eyes, right? So she has a website. So it's the national discourse that we've seen brought locally. She, on her website, on her Facebook page, she is at the inauguration with the Make America Great Again hats on. And when you bring that up to her supporters, that's not true. That's not true. Okay, it's there.
Have you actually pushed back on that?
Yeah, you look at campaign. Nah, that's not true. She was invited. She went. She was invited to the inauguration.
So
she's not supportive. She's friends with Biden. Really? Is that why their family gave thousands of dollars to the Trump campaign? I mean, the whole thing is just it's insane to me.
But you can't. Your normal MO might be to drive hard against that kind of a line, right? I wonder if you've listened to our earlier Unbuttoned this week, TFG Unbuttoned, which comes out on Tuesdays. We talked a bit about the status of vaccination in the U.S., and you had some firm opinions. But I wonder if you're allowed to be that firm on the campaign trail in front of someone, unless you're really pushing back against, no, go to the site. There's a picture.
Well, I wish there was an actual debate. I mean, I wish there was a debate.
Okay.
I mean, she's been under investigation from the Public Integrity Commission. She misrepresented herself as to who she was in order to get information that wasn't hers to have on a couple of issues. Not necessarily forthcoming about where she lives and where her residency is. I mean, there's all kinds of issues that are real issues that have come up. I mean, the city has had to pay, I think it's $14,000 to $17,000 to defend her, and an
Really?
ethics violation. And again, no, never mind. So I find it shocking. I find it shocking. And this weekend, they placed signs on public property. They even had one at the post office. Somebody was smart enough to take that down and throw it on the lawn. But I contacted the city manager and I said, their signs are on public property at the entrance to the beaches and the parks. They were smart enough to put them up Friday.
You can't do that, right? You can't. You
No,
have to be.
you can't put stuff on public property, political signs. I even went as far as I was so cautious with people that even asked for signs to even meet the homeowner at their house and say, where would you like me to put it? So I didn't, do you want me to put it in your driveway, whatever. So these morons put their signs, their supporters did, quote unquote. They knew what they were doing. You put them up Friday night, so then they stay up all weekend.
Yeah.
Because the city's not going to get them taken down until Monday morning. Because I just got an email on a few days ago on Monday saying they would take them. The city was going to go collect them and take them down. But they knew what they were doing. And so this whole integrity, transparency thing, it really drives me crazy. I think the whole thing,
so it sounds like a lot of game playing. It sounds like a lot of
game playing. It's game playing. It's dirty. It's a nasty little town. It reminds me of Little Edie. It's a nasty little mean.
You can get arrested on a Tuesday for wearing red shoes. Did you know that? Was that the line from Grey Gardens?
Yeah, you can get arrested for wearing red shoes on a Thursday.
I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you know that.
Do you know that? Yeah. So it's win or lose. It's been a great experience. I've met some great people, but boy, oh boy, I find it I find it troubling on a number of levels. I think there's some craziness here that really needs to be cleaned up on both ends. Quite frankly, there's a lot of lining of pockets.
Really?
Oh yeah. They don't get paid, but they get paid in other ways. People don't get paid. It's a volunteer position.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But they get paid in other ways.
Okay.
We'll leave it at that. Projects that, no bid projects, things, you find
if they
out
own a
with
company that
cousin,
was like a plumbing. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, you understand.
I understand indeed. Yes, indeed. I can't boast such.
It's Animal Farm, right, John? All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others.
Some are more equal. I can't boast such stuff. The most I've done is we went to visit a friend of ours for lunch in Saratoga last week, our friend Bob, who then showed us a part of the Saratoga area and the main Saratoga Park where SPAC, the Performing Arts Center, and, Saratoga used to be a spa city because they have this spa and this natural spring water that they actually bottle. But it was a fun afternoon, and I wasn't fighting with people over lawn signs or did you dare put that in the post office or, Yeah. And here where I'm at, I'm on my co-op board. We don't have such things. The back and forth with my fellow board members is extremely polite. Usually revolves around, are we going to pay that bill this way, or how do you want to do that? Should we go back? With stuff that's mechanical, very easy to deal with.
The interesting part is I don't know personally. I don't know the candidates, and I'm sure they're nice people. And I have met them. Oh,
didn't you do you did a debate with?
I have, and well, it was a forum.
Okay.
And so you exchange niceties, and I'm sure if they were next door neighbors, they'd be pleasant. It's really the supporters that are the rabid ones, on both sides that you just kind of shake your head about. So I really have no ill will against any of the candidates per se, but I do find the whole thing just. I do find the whole thing a big lesson, as you had mentioned, that. When you say all politics is local, but you also do find that you just wonder how bureaucracies work, and this is just a microcosm of that. So, yeah. And you probably see it in your board, right? Somebody said to you, "How come why did you put the door there? Why did that door get that color? Why did you take that plant down? Why did you cut that limb down? Why did you take that tree down?"
That we got a lot of the tree stuff. I wanted to see the birds in their nest. Why'd you take? Well, it was a hazard. It was dying. I wanted to see the birds in their nest.
Tree was dead.
Well, but then it goes back to I wanted to see the birds in their nest. Default position. No compromise. That's what's missing nowadays. That is totally what's missing. Joe Manchin said something on the floor of the Senate the other day that I thought was kind of funny. He said, no one got exactly what they wanted, but everybody got what they needed. He goes, that's called the art of compromise. So maybe it harkens back
Is this
to
the infrastructure bill?
yeah, yeah. And I thought it was an accurate thing because the thing's taking a long time to do, but apparently he's right. No one got exactly what they wanted, but everybody got what they needed. And that's
Do you think it's going to make it through do you think it's going to now make it through the House of Representatives with the
I do.
progressives?
Yeah, I think that they'll kind of fall in line. And you bring up a great point about the progressive side of the party. The centrist candidates are the ones that are usually winning some of these local elections and stuff. So it's again one of those typical things of the capital is a bit out of step with the populace. Does that make sense?
Right. Defund the police.
Yeah, stuff like that. And we know we can't do that. We need a healthy and active and vibrant law enforcement arm. So anyhow, you're a couple days away, and then your campaigning nightmare will be over to be supplanted by ruling nightmare.
Hey, but did you see, by the way, and did you see all of the, I know it happened in Boston. We might have I don't think we discussed it. It happened in Boston. It's happened in D.C. It's happened in Philly. I don't know if it's happened in New York yet, but a lot of the LGBTQ pride organizations have disbanded.
Yes, I noticed a
Did
couple.
it happen in New York, or is it?
I still think Heritage of Pride, which puts on the main event, is still up and running, but it's a big eye opener, isn't it?
Yeah,
For the community?
So I'm wondering if it's going to spread in terms of they're saying that they're not. There were issues regarding the police, or that these groups were not inclusive enough because they were done primarily 20, 30, 40 years ago, started by
grassroots activism. It was to have a public face. It wasn't a party. It was to protest and say, here we are, we need our rights, or we want to have our rights.
I wonder what's going to happen.
It's a good one. Here in New York State, this is a national organization, but the president of the HRC has been swept up in the Cuomo issues because he used to be an aide or someone who worked in the governor's staff, and now
I didn't realize that. Really?
Yeah, it just came out the other day, and somehow it's seeped into that thing. So,
what's going to happen with Cuomo? Is he going to resign?
I was watching Meet the Press on Sunday, and I forget which was a woman I like who is very smart. She simply said it's over. Now he has to decide how he wants to go. Does he want to resign on his own, or does he want to be impeached by the New York State Senate? And I kind of agree with her because the drumbeat is pretty loud. And I guess that report, if people have actually read the report, is pretty straightforward. And I don't doubt that I'm sure he didn't think he was doing what he was doing because there's the old school philosophy of how you treat people, the whole bit. But I just think I default to her position. She thinks politically it's over. It's just a matter of how do you want to leave the stage.
So how many years does he have left?
Well, he could run again. It would be and there is speculation that had he announced he wasn't going to run again, that they might not have gone at him so hard with the Attorney General's report. But I think it's only another year or so. I forget the term. But it's a strange turn of events, huh?
And a lot of people are equating this that there's been certainly other issues on the other side of the political
that have not gone
spectrum
punished.
Well, you got Matt, what's his name, Getz. You got the former president. Of course, this show will be pulled, by the way, everybody, because we're not supposed to talk about this stuff, right, John? We get in trouble.
No, you'll hear it if you're an audio subscriber, but it's the YouTube side that.
So, but I wondered, and so listen, if Cuomo did this, where there's smoke, there's fire. If onesie twosie is one thing, 11, 12 people, there's an issue.
That was the preponderance of people that came forward to testify was the thing.
Right. Yeah. It's like Weinstein, right? I mean, it was the same thing with him, with Miramax.
It was like tip of the iceberg, and then suddenly there was all these actresses who came forward very smartly. So it's
Cosby.
Yeah, it's amazing how things just change on a dime, right? Change on a dime. Anyway, on that note, let's go to Caught Your Eye.
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
Mr. Bennett, you're up.
Well, this may be the clumsiest segue. We're going to talk about honeybees.
Well, no, you're actually going to talk about the importance of legal issues, which are getting your house inspected, right?
So honeybees. So this was at a suburb out of Philadelphia. So everybody knows the real estate market's white hot, and everybody wants to get their dream their dream house. So there was a couple outside of Philadelphia that had found this property that they'd been looking at for quite a while, and it finally came available. And it was a farmhouse with some land. It was also in the right school district. And so this couple, it was the 1872's farmhouse. So they looked at it in the wintertime in December. And the disclosure doc said that there was a problem with bees, or that there were bees in the house. So the condition, let's see, I was trying to think exactly of how it phrased it, but it was essentially the seller's disclosure mentioned there were bees in the wall. That's all the disclosure said. So what's happened, and I had just sold a house as well. What has happened here is a lot of people, if they're so desperate for real estate right now or finding their dream house, they're foregoing the inspection. Now, I wasn't so lucky. I thought I might have people that wouldn't do the inspection. Some people forbid, or they would forego certain things.
Just to get the house, they would say, I don't need an inspection, which I think is crazy, by the way. But
right, or they would say, we're going to forgive X amount of $5,000 worth of repair, whatever the number would be. But in this case, the family, this couple was so excited, they said, some bees in the wall. We don't see any. It's December. Of course, there were no bees. So they don't do the inspection and they buy the house. Well, spring comes, and all of a sudden bees start coming alive, and bees are coming out of the light fixtures, and bees are coming out of the walls, and they start hearing all this noise of bees. So they don't know what to do, and they finally realize that they've now been inundated with bees, and all of this dirt. They said the house was horrendous. Nobody was living in the house. The house was empty. The man who had lived in the house had died, and the woman who had owned the home had not lived there. And they said the conditions in the house were horrendous. They just thought it was dirty. But what they originally thought was dirt was probably honey.
Oh, my God.
That was all on the walls and dripping. So they all thought it was dirt, but it was really honey marks and drip from the bees. So what had ended up happening is, as I said, the bees were coming out of everywhere. They said it was coming out of the light fixtures, coming out of walls and closets and all kinds of nooks and crannies in this old house. So they have to call this exterminator guy, and he ends up coming. He knew the house exactly. He had been there before, and he had given the family a quote that had owned the house before of what it would cost to get rid of these bees, and the family couldn't afford it, so they decided to sell the house.
To make it someone else's problem, right?
Right. So this guy says, he knew exactly what the issue was when he arrives at the house. So as a sidebar, they said that honeybees' greatest importance to agriculture isn't a product of the hive, so it's not the honey, but the agricultural benefit of honeybees is estimated to be between 10 and 20 times more of them pollinating, plants and agriculture than, the honey or the beeswax. So what they wanted to make sure, because there's been such a problem with bees with climate change and so forth, they said last year, for instance, or between 20 and 21, in the United States, 45.5% of the honeybee colonies were damaged. Mm-hmm. We've lost that much. So these folks were very cognizant of that and wanted to save these bees. So they worked with this exterminator, bee saver, whatever this however you would identify this guy, to figure out how we could
move the hive.
They could move these bees. So he said it would cost them, the bees, they figured out the bees were in there about 35 years.
Oh, my God.
Inside this house.
They must have. Oh, my God.
So if you're watching, John's got a couple of pictures. So what they usually would do would remove some tiles or some siding from the house, and they would find the colonies and the hives and remove them. Well, in this case, they kept having to remove and remove and remove. There was up close to 500,000 bees.
Wow.
450,000 bees they estimate in there. They've been in there for 35 years. And, pretty much had taken over this house. So they were trying to figure out, it was going to cost them up to $12,000 or more. But they wanted to save these bees and move them to a farm because it was such a value to lose all these bees. So they had this special sort of vacuum. They were going to suck them up and then move these bees over to this nearby local farm. And so they started a GoFundMe page with the goal of trying to raise, it was called Save the Honeybees, and it got up close to $10,000 to save these bees and move them out of the house. And were able to do that, but not certainly what these people bargained for. They thought it was initially going to cost maybe $2,500, but the project got up to $12,000 pretty quick. And so they were able to move the bees. They said they vacuumed them up. It was they had to cut the combs out and they sucked the bees up with some sort of special vacuum that doesn't do them any harm. And they also used the 3 queen bee colonies to attract the rest of the bees to come out of the house and then move them to a nearby orchard and a farm that was nearby to save the bees. But the moral of the story was you need to get a house inspection.
Thank you. I was going to say, I'm glad they saved them because you pointed out earlier in the article that agricultural needs for bee colonies. I mean, there are people that travel with bee colonies and they go from farm to farm and you hire them to let the bees out and pollinate your crop, and then they move to a different area. And because of some strange illness that they're still trying to figure out, many bee colonies have been decimated, as you pointed out. So this is pretty interesting and cool. I think the GoFundMe, talk about a really perfect use for a GoFundMe, right?
Right.
You know, you
Yeah,
don't
and I
have
think
the
you're
resources,
exactly
but people know, enough people have read about the honeybee problem that they're like, oh, you know what, this is a really good thing. They're going to go to an orchard. Wow.
Yeah, this guy and the guy that did this, I should not have called him an exterminator. He was more of a experienced beekeeper,
Okay.
and to move these bees, and so he moved them to it was called Yerkes Honey Farm.
Mm-hmm.
But you remember Mary?
I
friend
do,
of Greensboro.
yeah.
She had bees down in the city, so she was doing this thing called Honey in the Hood, and her bees would get loose and get on people's houses. But it was the same sort of thing. She would put on her beekeeper outfit and then go into the neighborhood and attract these bees and bring them back home.
Come on.
But it
it's
was
like
the
the
same-
Pied Piper
yeah.
for bees.
Right, but it was the same sort of thing, knowing how important these are. And you're exactly right, John. It's one of these things where, what a great use for a GoFundMe page, and something I think all of us would say, I would donate to that, because it
Sure.
really is. I don't think people realize what could happen if we didn't have bees.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really, from an agricultural standpoint, it really is the catalyst to life, right?
It's a huge necessity, and it's one of those things that if you don't have it and it's gone, boy, you're in trouble. Well, I have a different kind of caught our eye. So, Tim, you remember we were out in Vegas many years ago. We did a number of shows from the Luxor. We did the pool party
Right.
shows. Well, one time we were out there, and the Titanic exhibit was at the Luxor for many years. And many people listening have probably seen a version of the Titanic exhibit where they had artifacts that were brought up from the Robert Ballard missions and later missions, eyeglasses, books and shoes, things like that. And then they had beautiful photographs and, history of the ship. Well, at the one in Luxor and now, apparently the exhibit has come to rest and is permanently in Tennessee, the Smoky Mountain area. There's in Vegas and in Tennessee, when you walk into the exhibit, the first thing you see is a wall of ice. And you're invited to touch the ice because then it's going to let you feel what it was like on the night back in 1912 when the Titanic sank, after hitting the iceberg, colliding with it. So I saw this article and I just said to Bob, I wonder if this is a caught my eye. He goes, you bet it is. Because the headline reads, Titanic Museum's wall of ice comes crashing down on visitors. The Titanic Museum attraction in the U.S. left 3 visitors injured after a large wall of ice collapsed. The tourist hotspot in Tennessee's Smoky Mountains calls itself the world's largest museum in tribute to the famous shipwreck, sunk over a century ago. So the local fire department was called around 8:11 at night on a Monday, and they came over there. One person, sadly, was airlifted to a medical center 30 miles away, while other 2 people were taken to an ambulance for local care. But the wall collapsed, and it hurt somebody very badly. And the firefighter says, this is the part I love. Firefighter Chief Tony L. Watson told CNN, something caused that ice to fall off that wall.
Jesus.
It's thought the wall will take 4 weeks to rebuild. The museum staff quickly closed the tourist attraction and helped get members of the building out. They never expected an incident like this. They have that area walled off now. You can still visit and put your hand in cold water to see what the water was like when Titanic's passengers dove in to try to save themselves. But I just love the firemen. Something caused that ice to come off.
See, I saw this story and I pulled it, but I didn't present it to you. But I busted out laughing when I saw the headline. And
Did
I
you
thought
really?
This was right up your alley. So I'm glad you did find it and brought it forward, because I thought I'm going to show this to John. Maybe we'll do it on our podcast. I know you're not supposed to laugh, but this is one of those things where I laughed. I thought, This
And
when it said the wall came down,
tumbling
on top
down.
of
Yeah.
visitors.
No, we don't want anybody hurt. We don't advocate that, but there's something about, Tim and I, we have similar senses of humor.
Well,
The,
there's something about the Titanic wall falls on, right? I mean, it's just
the ice that kills
yeah,
the visitor, it also killed people at sea. So
yeah.
the
I mean,
article ends in a funny way. Two quick paragraphs. The wall of ice will be off limits until repaired, but visitors will still be able to enjoy other features, including the chance to put their hands in freezing cold water, which simulates the conditions the Titanic's passengers endured after the ship capsized. It didn't capsize, it sank. And then the last paragraph, they also received boarding passes featuring the names of actual passengers or crew who were aboard the famous vessel during the tragic maiden voyage, which is actually like they did in Vegas. You get someone's name, and often there's someone who died. And at the end of the exhibit, you see, did you live or did you die? I mean, this is right up there with the Barbed Wire Museum, Tim, right?
did you live or did you die?
Yeah, I think that when we did it in Vegas, I died. I think I was Guggenheim. I was someone famous on the show.
Were you? I was way in the bottom. I was in the bottom of the
Did you
boat.
live? Did you live? Do you remember if you lived or not?
I didn't even know if I made it on the ship.
We still
I was-
have
I-
we still have a plate that we bought at the gift shop. You know, Bob loves a gift shop, and the Titanic gift shop was. We
What
could
kind
have.
of plate did you have? Was it
We
a?
bought a plate that was used as service for third class passengers because it said White Star Line Titanic on it. The first class China was a little too ornate and a little too non-specific. So yeah, wall of ice falls down. It's like the same. You might as well have just gone back in time. Iceberg sinks ship. Wall of ice falls on.
Bob does love a gift shop, doesn't he?
He does indeed. Yeah, he knows how to orient himself for gift shop. Where's the gift shop? All right. As many of you know, Deep Discount is a partner of ours here on the Focus Group, and we would love to have you visit their site by going to ours, focusgroupradio.com, and clicking on the Deep Discount logo. It's Sharky the Shark. This week, we have a sale, TV Complete Series sale, and if you click on the link and you get to Deep Discount, by all means, check out the complete sale. Oh, there's Lucy down there. I see her. It's an opportunity to get shows that you may have missed, ones that may not be streaming. I have some selections, and I know that Tim does, and Tim always comes up with good ones here. So what did you have, Mr. Bennett?
So this week I picked The Americans, which is it's a period drama about the marriage of two KGB spies in the 80s that were posed as they pose as Americans with no accents or anything. So they're like this typical American family that were two KGB agents that were put together, and then they have to come to the U.S. and they make a family, but they're really Russian spies during the during the Reagan administration. I love that whole Reagan 80s era of the
You'd like to be back there when we knew who our enemies were, right?
Exactly. Right. Like when we talked about that on Unbuttoned on our podcast this week, that we knew right from wrong, East versus West,
good versus evil.
Right. We knew where we all stood and where we all our place in the world. So I loved I don't have you watched The Americans?
No, I'm very curious about it, and I'm glad you picked it because it's one of those shows that came. I think it was 2 or 3. How many? It was like 3 seasons or something.
It's actually 6 seasons. It started in 2013, but it's just been released. Well, not just released. It was released in February 2019. So you can get all 6 seasons, and it's $30, $29.99, and the DVDs. But it's interesting because what happens, as we all know, and just the arc of these Russian spies, Reagan is there, but as Gorbachev comes in, obviously things change in the Soviet Union, and as the Soviet Union dissolves, what happens to these Russian spies?
They're embedded.
And
yeah.
So it's pretty cool, and I'm not finished watching the series yet. I'm still watching it, so it's
okay.
But I think it's well done. I think you'd enjoy it. So my recommendation is The
Americans, the complete series.
Mark and Carl actually turned me on to it.
Oh, well, they've got great taste. Okay, so that's on my list now. I went in a different direction. I went with a show that I believe had premiered originally on HBO, and it's called The Deuce. And it stars James Franco and Maggie Gyllenhaal. And The Deuce is an American drama set in New York City during the 70s and early 80s. It features a large cast, including James Franco, who I mentioned, and Maggie Gyllenhaal. She plays an ambitious sex worker who becomes a film director. And the whole, The Deuce, the complete series, tells the story of the golden age of pornography, the legalization and rise of the porn industry in New York City that began in the 70s. And here's how they put it. Themes explored include government and police corruption, the violence of the drug epidemic, and the real estate booms and busts that coincide with the change. The show's title is derived from the nickname, which I did not know this, for 42nd Street between 7th Avenue and 8th Avenue. Did you? I had no idea it was called The Deuce.
The Deuce.
The nickname for 42nd between 7th and 8th. It's kind of interesting. I saw bits and pieces of it. It really well produced, and I've been dying to see the whole thing. So I took the opportunity to choose something that I really didn't see, and this is perfect. And I don't.
Was this on cable or was this on?
I think it was HBO.
HBO. Okay.
Yeah.
I never heard of it.
Oh, it's our friend Lauren at Deep Discount probably saw this and liked it, and I'm sure she recommended it. She may get back to us after she hears the show and tell us her actual critique. And folks, if you ever hear us mention Lauren from Deep Discount, if she recommends something, by all means pick it up. Oh, and Tim, I got my collection of Lucy discs as well in the mail. I have lots of viewing to do. Our friends at Deep Discount arranged for the studio that did the Lucille Ball specials to send us some of the discs. Tim had mentioned about 2 or 3 weeks ago that he wanted to get a disc called Lucy Calls the President, right?
Right.
Well, there's a whole bunch. The one I'm going to pop in first is Lucy and Desi, a home movie. That looks interesting to me. You got a copy of that too, right?
Yeah. Did you see? Yeah, I have them in the other room. I don't have them in front of me, but do you have them there with you?
Yeah, I have one of the. This is the Lucy and Desi home movie one. And then here, look, Lucy Calls the President.
I think it is Jimmy Carter, isn't it? It's probably Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, it's the Carter years. All right, so the release this week is a movie that came out a little while ago, actually, earlier in the year. And it's called Queen Bees, and it stars Ellen Burstyn, James Caan, Anne Margaret, Jane Curtin, and Loretta Devine, Christopher Lloyd, Elizabeth Mitchell, Matthew Barnes, and French Stewart, and Alec Mapa. So if it sounds familiar to you, or those names sound familiar to you, it is a collection of some really great actors in this movie. And it's about Ellen Burstyn. She told us she has to stay at a nearby retirement center. Her stay there would be just about a month. She hadn't reckoned on the persistent flirtations of resident Dan Simpson, who's played by James Caan, or the overbearing presence of the facility's mean girl clique, Anne Margaret. Can you imagine a mean girl clique being played by Anne Margaret? Jane Curtin would probably do a good job, and Loretta Devine. So it's called Queen Bees, engaging Sunset Years ensemble cast, and I'm going to call this like our favorite older actors kind of movie, right? Right.
Well, it is. It's a when I laughed when I saw that it came up, because you're exactly right. It's kind of a seniors Mean Girls, right? It's
yes, exactly. Yeah,
the bullying movie. So it's a must see for the new release. So head over to focusgroupradio.com. Click on the Deep Discount logo. It's the TV Complete series sale. John picked a series that was recommended called The Deuce, which I'm going to have to watch that too, because that sounds like something that would be pretty cool to watch. And our friend
it
Lauren,
involves porn, so.
Well, of course, who doesn't want to watch that, right?
Yeah.
And so she recommended it, which sounds great, because she has great recommendations. I recommended The Americans, which is a period piece during about 2 KGB spies in the U.S. in the 80s. And the new release this week is Queen Bees. And again, head over to Deep Discount, click on the logo. We like to get credit for it. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we've got some shop talk, and we're going to talk about an employee a former employee who ended up trashing his employer online at some job sites, and then the employer turned around and sued him. So I have some thoughts about it, and I wonder if we all feel the same. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to the focus group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
All right, it's the focus group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host Tim Bennett. Focusgroupradio.com is really all you need to know. And if you want to drop us a line, letters at focusgroupradio.com. And of course, TFGM Button is our Tuesday podcast as well. And if you subscribe to this, you'll get that in your feed as well. So on the back end of our show, we have a business birthday and shop talk about leaving a negative review of an employer and how that could play out. But before we get there, let's do the business birthday.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the focus group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
I don't know. Have we done this business birthday before, John? We've
talked about this guy, but I don't believe we've done a birthday.
Okay, so it's Frederick Smith, who's born August 11th, 1944. He's celebrating his 77th birthday today. He's still alive. I'm sure he's listening to the show. Hi, Fred. He's an American businessman, best known as being the founder and CEO of Federal Express, or FedEx. Company's headquartered in Smith's hometown of Memphis, Tennessee. Frederick was born in Marks, Mississippi. He was the son of James Frederick, the founder of the Toddle House restaurant chain. I never heard of that. This was a southern chain of restaurants. There was about 40, 50 of them in their heyday. Did you ever hear of that? It sounded like it was maybe a little like country diner restaurant-y sort of thing.
That's
but
what
they made money on it, by the way.
That's his background, right?
Yeah, the father. So the father left him money. That's how he started FedEx. So the restaurants were doing okay. So this chain of restaurants, the Toddle House restaurants in the South, the father also owned the Smith Motor Coach Company, which was renamed the Dixie Greyhound Line Greyhound Lines after the Greyhound Corporation bought a controlling interest in the bus company in 1931. Smith entered Yale University, as they all do, 1962. And while attending Yale, he wrote a paper for an economics class with the idea of doing an overnight delivery service. As academics normally do, he got a C. The professor didn't think it was feasible. Not a good idea.
Interesting.
Didn't think it was a feasible idea. So he was a friend of and also a member of the Delta Kappa Epsilon fraternity and also a member of Skull and Bones, which we all
George
know.
Bush,
was John Kerry and George W. Bush, President and Secretary of State. So they were all friends together and all were very good friends, apparently. He received his bachelor's degree in 1966. And so they all hung out together. And it was interesting. They said that he was equally friends with both of them, and they did a lot of things together. They said, particularly with John Kerry, they both shared an enthusiasm for aviation. And they were actually flying partners. They used to fly planes a lot together. And but they did say that when it came time when they were both running for office in later years, that actually Fred Smith had become closer and more supportive of George Bush than John Kerry. But after graduation, Smith and Kerry went off to Vietnam. Bush went down to Alabama to learn to do something. I forget what he was doing. Remember, he was flying planes in Alabama.
Yep.
The other two went off to Vietnam. So when he came back in 1970, Smith purchased a controlling interest in an aircraft maintenance company called Arc Aviation, and he started trading jets. He still liked airplanes and started trading jets. So in 1971, after he was trading jets, his father had died and left him $4 million of inheritance. So, which was about $23 million
in today's
money.
Okay.
So he had raised some additional dollars and some venture capital, and decided to. He founded what he called Federal Express in 1973. And his idea was he was going to service, based upon this paper he did at Yale, which he still remembered, thought it was a good idea. He was going to do service to 25 cities and deliver small packages and documents with this fleet of 14 Falcon jets, little Falcon jets. And he was going to use the same idea that you would use for a bank clearinghouse. So in other words, there was going to be a hub, and then everything would go into this center hub, and then off of that, you would take and off the spoke and hub sort of model.
Like local and national airport routes, right?
Right. So that's what he based it off of. And of course, he went to great lengths to try to keep the company afloat. And he, struggled in the beginning. They said in one instance, for example, he people did not really value his service or really feel there was this need to do this overnight, because that was his thing, his overnight delivery. So he said he was denied a business loan, and he was down to his last $5,000. So you can imagine going from 91
So
million to 5,000.
Are you gonna talk about how he made payroll? Because
Yes.
is this it's not an urban legend then? You go
So he
ahead.
says
Yeah.
he says after a crucial business loan was denied, he didn't know what to do. He took his last $5,000 to Las Vegas, and he won $27,000 gambling on blackjack, which covered the company's $24,000 fuel bill for that week, and was able to keep FedEx alive for one more week and sustain the company and keep it going. So that's how he saved FedEx. It says in 2000, when George Bush won election, he actually tapped Fred Smith to be the Secretary of Defense, but he had some medical issues and he couldn't do it. So that's how Rumsfeld got the job.
But Interesting.
Smith
was the
Smith
first
was
pick.
the first choice.
Was the first pick.
And then they said, and then when Kerry and Bush were both running, they said that Smith had actually endorsed Bush. When Rumsfeld stepped down, they actually asked Smith again to be Secretary of Defense. He said no. His daughter at that time was ill. And then Smith had actually supported John McCain's 2008 presidential bid. And he's won many, many awards over the years. Any kind of business award there was, they talk about. In 2014, he was labeled or ranked as one of the world's greatest 50 business leaders, world business leaders of all time. He owned a couple of national sports teams. Right now, they said he's still heavily invested in some major league sports teams. As a sidebar, I worked with the jackass that convinced Federal Express back in, I don't know if you remember this story. Back in 1973, they came up with the tagline, "When it absolutely positively has to be there."
I love
that. So I worked with the jackass that convinced them to change it to. Do you know what the new tagline was?
No.
In 1994. So they changed the name of the company from Federal Express to FedEx, and this was in 1994 for a branding thing. Now, I think that made sense.
Yeah.
But they then got rid of the tagline and changed it to "The World on Time," which nobody knows.
Well, no one pays attention to that one. I mean, I guess UPS has a tagline too.
Well, remember UPS was "What could Brown do for you?"
Yeah.
Remember that?
Okay, yeah.
The Martin Group. But this guy bragged. I told FedEx to, I came up with FedEx and I told them to get rid of that tagline. I was like, really? Because that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You got rid of "when it absolutely positively has to be there." It's like getting rid of BMW's "the ultimate driving machine," right? So
when it absolutely,
and you change it to "The World on Time." Mm-hmm. Really? You're proud of this? Keep your mouth shut. Anyway, so that was happy birthday, Fred Smith, 77 today. Fred, if you want, we're always looking for sponsors, Fred. If you want to sponsor the focus group, we're not looking for millions. And we use FedEx and we use UPS, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We use and we use the Postal Service as well. If I would be happy if FedEx came on board and we could run all advertising from the heyday with the old tagline, because of your love of that. They probably have some of their old spots and some of the old print ads we could run. I mean, actually, that's a fun idea to have a sponsor to come on board and run advertising from the 80s and 90s.
And there was something, and I have to look it up, but there was something about the two colors too, the purple and the orange. There was something about the two colors, a reason the two colors were chosen.
My favorite thing about him is which I had thought was an urban legend, was how he went to Vegas to meet payroll and fuel costs with the remaining money that he had. And to know that it is in fact true, I think that's really, I think that's cool.
And can you imagine if he lost it? What would he have done?
I'm guessing that he literally was like, you know what? It's 50-50. I'm going to put it on. And you said it was blackjack he was playing, right?
Blackjack, yep. 27K.
Is that the most or the best odds game? I think blackjack is one of the ones that you could actually not do to, obviously he didn't go to the one-armed bandit, right? He didn't do the slot
machine. I thought
machine.
They said craps was the best one.
Craps is with the dice? Really? Okay.
Yeah. That's the best one. If you know what you're doing. I can't count that quick with my fingers. Chisel Bob. I'm trying to count. You and I failed math.
No, we
you
passed, but
if there's an
barely.
8 and a 5, I'm like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Right? Can you count quick? I can't count. I can't count that quick.
No.
All right. There's a 7 and a 6. That's 13.
13,
All
yeah.
right, 13. Now throw an 8 down. Oh, wait a minute. 8, 13. And they got to be quick.
Yeah,
When
really
they
quick.
throw the dice. I always marvel at how quick some of these
So
folks are.
so the fact that he won that much money, I just think it's cool. And folks, don't do this at home. Don't take your last dimes and go to Vegas, because those casinos and those hotels, they weren't built by people losing. In fact, when you fly over into McCarran Airport, so anybody on the plane might actually say, by the way, folks, all that stuff wasn't built by people, because whenever I went with friends they were on the plane, they were calculating how they were going to pay off their credit cards, they were going to invest this money they were going to win, and everybody always left Vegas.
I don't know anyone. Yeah, I don't know anyone who's. Well, I have a friend that says they always win, but
I won $100 once in a slot, and I spent it all away. And Bob was pissed because when he said that 100 could have paid for a dinner, well, it didn't.
I like how Bob all of a sudden on certain things becomes practical, because he's unpractical about 99.9% of stuff, isn't he?
Yeah, it tends to
Like
be.
Richard.
Yeah. All right. We're going to move on to our shop talk that we teased at the beginning of the show. And the article that Tim found was called "A Former Employee Trashed His Employer Online. Now They're Suing Him." This will make you think twice before trashing a company online. So a man leaves a bad review on Glassdoor. His name is Wyatt Troya. He was a software engineer currently working at Microsoft, but he began his barrage against Lone Street, his former employer, when he had left a while ago. And he began by leaving bad reviews. And Glassdoor, unless you're familiar with it, is a site that you could leave reviews specifically about what it's like to work at certain companies, glassdoor.com. It's always good to check those things out, but like anything, I think too many negatives, too many positives, somewhere in the middle probably is the truth. But he left a number of stuff. His previous employer, Lone Street, claims that he actually also took out ads or Google ads to kind of to drive people to the negative reviews that he left. And more than a year later, after all this happened, he started to then name executives at the company, including Ian Lample, the company's chief executive officer, and Christopher Wu, who co-founded the Lone Lone Street, calling them spineless sycophants. Apparently, he was promised something in his employment deal. They didn't follow through exactly the way he thought they would. And he was out some money, and he's pissed off about it. And they did release him. They claim it was for his not participating in the workforce and bad work and a bunch of other things. But this is a puzzle to me because obviously Lone Street has deep pockets, and they could make something happen, right? I mean, they could go after this guy and cause him some pain.
Yeah, usually on any of those things, as you said, if you read Glassdoor, and they said he went on Reddit and something called Blind, which I've never heard of. Mm-hmm. But you would leave a review, and it would say, they have great benefits, but the hours are long, or there's great benefits, but it's unorganized structure, or there's some innocuous usually reviews of something, or be prepared to work very hard in late hours, or the staff is great benefits, but blah blah. There's usually stuff like that's listed there. What I thought he did, he must have had an axe to grind. So he says he was, as you mentioned, he feels he was done wrong there, I guess. Says he was duped out of $100,000 by not being vested properly. I guess he was supposed to get some options or being vested in the company. But then when you start naming people's names, I think that was obviously a mistake for him. But my question on this as well was, then the company came back, and when they said that, we fired him because he wasn't a good engineer, he didn't engage well, he didn't cooperate with peers, he didn't take direction, I thought, can now he countersue back for defamation as well? Because now they're saying that about him, which could affect his employment. So I thought, is this just now going to feed upon itself? And I thought, because are they now making it difficult for him to get a job because they're putting that out there?
Well, he's at Microsoft currently, so he does have a job. And as what Tim was just alluding to, Lone Street came back and said he was released for the poor quality of his engineering, his lack of engagement with his team, his inability to cooperate with his peers, or to take direction from his superiors. Now, if that was not exactly what he was given on his exit interview as the reason for them letting him go, then you are 100% correct. There would be cause for him to go back and say, wait a minute, you're telling me now you got rid of me for these reasons. When you got rid of me a year or two ago, it was for a different set of reasons. And, a lot of this comes down to his perception of something. So they claim that when he was hired, he thought he would begin vesting in the company, because it's like a startup, after a year. But he wasn't able to get the terms in writing. That's a key point there. And soon learned that they would not begin to vest until 16 months of employment had transpired. So basically it would be 16 months after he started, then he'd become vesting, as opposed to this year after. We're talking about 4 months difference. It wasn't in writing, which again, folks, Tim, you and I have learned repeatedly, take good notes and get it in writing, because often it's what saves you in the end with some of these problems, especially if the legal stuff comes up. So it sounds like he's just created a tangled mess. And when he leaves, he used to leave things like, here's one of his negative comments: stay far, far away unless you're truly desperate. Lone Street is a raging dumpster fire, and you will get burned like many before. Now, if you're trying to run that company and find talent, this might piss you off, right? Because these things stay in perpetuity on the internet, right?
Right. But that's where I don't. So he obviously has an axe to grind, and but I'm wondering if so when Lone Street came back and said, well, he's a poor engineer and I thought, so if you're Microsoft now, do you look at that and say, oh, maybe we'll fire him, he's a problem, and so he loses his job? I don't know. I just wondered in these sort of things. It looks as if he's, or maybe now if you're Microsoft, you're like, oh my God, now we've got a problem employee on our hands, because this guy might be a problem for them later on.
You're implying that they're looking over their shoulder now.
Well, yeah, because you're like, oh my God.
So Troya, the guy that was fired, he set up a GoFundMe to fund his legal team. And earlier we were doing Caught Your Eye, and Tim was discussing the home that the new owners got that had to move a whole bee colony to an orchard. And they used a GoFundMe to defray some of the expense of that. That's a good GoFundMe. This is interesting because this guy says they are throwing the kitchen sink at me, accusing me of breach of contract, defamation, injurious falsehood, unfair competition, and false designation of origin. Troya said, all the accusations are either false or are attempts to enforce contract provisions that are illegal under federal labor law. There's a lot you can unpack from that, right? So they're trying to enforce a contract. He clearly signed something, right?
Right.
So I don't know. This is going to... Lone Street is headquartered here in New York City, by the way, and they were founded in 2013. I think it's just would you call it a cautionary tale? Is that what you'd say? It's a cautionary tale?
Well, I'd be curious to say, my guess is Wyatt is probably in his 30s. And, my guess is, you certainly don't, you have to be, well.
You have to be careful.
You have to be careful. You also don't put stuff like this in writing and name people's names, and because it's not going to end well. And, we all know that. And if you think you're going to go after a company, as you said earlier, that probably has deep pockets, and you're going to be detrimental to them, either hiring talent or affect their ability to either attract talent or conduct business, you're going to pay the price. And
it's a different matter, and I've learned this from Tim. It's a very different matter if you are dealing with a contract that one party broke, and then you do a calculus. You're like, well, if I go after that, you have to literally sit down and say, what kind of resources am I going to put into getting what I think is owed to me or what I know is owed to me? This employment stuff, Tim, you've told me repeatedly that you had a friend who was an attorney for a corporation, and she's like, you just give it some thought, because the minute you go down that road, it's years of litigation. It's not days or months, it's years, and you don't know where it's going to go.
You know where it's going to go, and there's a reason that they've got floors of attorneys.
Yeah.
And you are one person.
And that's how Tim taught me that one. All right, so that was a good shop talk, Tim.
Yeah,
Thanks for finding that.
So, hey, thanks for joining us today. It's a focus group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Be sure to also catch our Tuesday podcast, which is TFG Unbuttoned. Find all of our media, which is housed at focusgroupradio.com. Thanks to our friends at Deep Discount. Head over there as well at focusgroupradio.com and click on the Deep Discount logo. It's the TV series Complete Sale this week. I picked The Americans. John picked a series called The Deuce. And the new release this week is Queen Bees. And you can find all of that at Deep Discount. And we appreciate their support of us here on the show. Mr. Nash, thank you for everything. And hope you have a good remainder of the week. Well, next week, we'll know whether I won this election or not. And
it's in the bag. It's in the bag.
Win or lose, it was a good experience. So we'll see what happens. I'll have to post it on Saturday when the election's Saturday.
Please do.
So we'll see what's going. So everybody have a good week, and we'll see you on Tuesday when we're doing our podcast TFG Unbuttoned. Take care.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.